So, good afternoon, everybody, and I hope that you all are feeling refreshed.
Yes.
So, as is the tradition, we'll begin with, we'll show the verses and we'll come back to it later, right? But the main topic of today is going to be ignorance and pretense, right? First we'll talk about pretense and then ignorance, right? So, of course, the intention setting and all, I have told it many times that I'm sure your ear must be bleeding. Of course, the intention setting and all of this are really important, right? So, first we set the intention for improving ourselves. Then, once we have that intention, then we can generate the mind or the want for the other beings to be rid of suffering or want to improve them also, right? First, the main important thing is you need to improve yourself before you improve others, right? Before you say something to others. So today we are going to talk about pretense and ignorance. One is a root, one is a secondary. Firstly, I just wanted to talk about ignorance, but suddenly I felt pretense was also important. So let's begin with the three verses that we have. So one is from Master Aryadeva, right? So here he says, just like the body faculty in the entire body, delusion resides in all afflictions. Therefore, all afflictions will be destroyed through the destruction of delusion, right? So next is, just sit with this quote for a moment. Here he's saying, basically, we'll come back to it again. He's saying all afflictions have delusion in them, right? Delusion in them. However, they are engaging with the object. Then the second one is from Shantideva. A big font, right? In your face. The mind, when cramped by ignorance, is important, not important, important and cannot do its work. Right? When we are ignorant, when we are fueled by ignorance, our mind cannot do its work, which is being clear and aware, right? Then the third one, of the suffering existing in the world, its root is none other than ignorance. The understanding to kill this root, you said, is none other than dependent arising. So, all of these teachings from ancient Nalanda master around more than 1,500 years ago, they are all pointing towards something, right? They are all pointing and saying that this is the root of all suffering, which is ignorance, right? So, before we go deep into that, we'll first talk about pretense. So, here the three quotes are saying that whatever we talked about in the past few sessions about jealousy, anger, pride, and envy or everything is have the same root, delusion or ignorance, right? So, before we go deep into that, let's keep that for later, right? So we will first go into the pretense, right? So, of course, we are using the same framework. I'm sure you all are so familiar with it now. Identify, recognize the causes or how it arises. Then, what's the antidote that I can use, right? One of my the tagline, one of the favorite one is to name it to tame it, right? That's become the tagline. So that's the most, for me, it is the most easiest and most practical to do it. Just whenever the emotion arises, you just name it, right? You just name the emotion, then it loses its power. For me, this is a really powerful and practical, easy to do. Otherwise, it will be funny, right? When you are suddenly angry, 1 minute, I need to sit in a meditation pose. You sit in a meditation pose and think of all emptiness and bodhicitta and all. Then it feels like, is this person crazy? Your friend may think like that, right? So the thing here is something that's practical and easy to do, name it to tame it. Okay? So we understand the causes, we understand the antidotes. Of course, there are classical methods and of course, little bit of modern, like distancing yourself from your phone and all this so that we can weaken it, right? Not uproot it, but weaken it from its strength. So what we are talking about here is not about some distant, what do we call, fantasy or something, right? We are actually talking about our own lives, how to implement it, how to improve it. So it's really important that this really matters, right? This really matters. Then never in our human history have we been faced with such a, what do we call, loneliness pandemic, depression pandemic, anxiety pandemic, stress pandemic, right? Okay, pandemic. I'm sure the pandemic itself is a scary word, right? These are the pandemics that don't cause lockdowns, but inside it creates, what do we call? Anxiety. Suffering, right? For suffering. So, we'll start with pretense. So, what is pretense? What exactly is pretense, right? So, here we can see the pretense, the technical terminology. It's associated with attachment or delusion. And it's a mental factor that's out of attachment to gain respect, wants to show, right? And with an intention to deceive others, that one has good qualities that one does not actually have, right? Basically, it's you faking it, right? Even though you don't have it, you're faking it. It functions to establish wrong livelihood. So, here, pretense is basically wearing a mask, putting on a mask, pretending something that we don't have. It's not the filter of your mobile phone. It's the Instagram filter, or what filter do you use here? Instagram filter or TikTok filter? Or is it a Snapchat filter, right? It's a type of a filter that's in our mind, right? It's an Instagram filter of our mind, where we wear the masks that are not there. We wear the mask to not show who we really are. So, if this sounds familiar, let's not worry about it, right? You are not alone in this. You all have good company, right? We all, in a way, sometimes have pretense arising in us, right? So, that's the thing. So, in classical, like psychology, Abhidharma psychology, in Buddhist psychology, pretense is a secondary mental affliction. It's arising from attachment, as mentioned in the its definition. So it is to deceive others, right? The main goal here of pretense arising in us is to deceive others through displaying virtuous quality, right? Suppose you are doing a retreat, okay, retreat or a meditation. We just say, since we have been doing some type of little meditations, then even though you are not meditating, you may just close your eyes and open them slightly, seeing here and there whether others are meditating or not. Okay, if I open my eyes, am I not meditating? Oh, they haven't opened their eyes. I should also close my eyes. So this is a pretense, right? This is a pretense. And this is the little subtle pretense. It doesn't harm others as that much as it harms yourself. But it is also like pretending to have qualities, realizations, virtues that we do not actually have, right? If you actually have it, then there's no problem here. So why does this come? This comes out of attachment towards something, right? Attachment towards your own image that other person doesn't see. So here we can see that it always arises from attachment to something, your image, your something, right? So here what we can say is the curated identity that's not aligned with reality, right? The Instagram identity that you have, or Instagram or Facebook or whichever social media that you have, right? That identity that's not aligned with your own reality, right? That curated self, right? So the highlight is the highlight reel of the self that is not backed by a full movie. If you know the full movie, it's just the trailer. You just see the trailer and feel this movie is the perfect movie, right? But you don't know the full movie. Then people may think the movie is good, but the movie may actually be bad, right? So it's like that. So basically, simply put, pretense is lying about who you are to get something you want, whether it be likes on a social post, whether it be whether it be a promotion that you seek, right? It's not a deliberate, conscious lie. Like sometimes we do it automatically, right? Like sometimes we do it so automatically that we don't even notice. So that thing notice comes here again. Once you start to notice it, it goes, you are already making progress, right? So basically pretense has three marks of it arising. One is you hide parts of yourself that you are in a way slightly ashamed, or you think that it will cost you respect, right? Suppose in the meditation time, you don't open your eyes because you think the other people may think you are not meditating, right? So that's one. You are hiding your fault, or hiding something that you are not doing. Then second is it is manufacturing your virtues, right? What you don't have, you are showing. So that's the thing. Then there is an intention to deceive, whether it be, I'm going to let them believe I'm like this. I'm going to let them believe I am kind. I want to let them believe that I'm a practitioner, great practitioner. So that's the pretense. That's there. So that's pretense. Of course, it's recognizable, right? It's easy to identify. So what are the causes of where does it arise from? One is now we are going for the second part of recognizing the causes of pretense. One is, of course, attachment, as mentioned in the technical term. So the one of the causes is ignorance of your own worth, right? Ignorance of your own worth. So again, ignorance is root here. So at the deepest level, that we don't believe that we are enough as we are, right? Deepest level. You think if people saw this, then your doubts, your vulnerabilities, your failures or something, they would reject you. They may reject you, but you have this type of strong belief of that, right? So pretense in a way is born from not seeing reality. The reality being that even though people may not see your worth, there are other people that see your worth, right? The thing is that you are actually worthy, right? We all are complicated beings. Each of us may have good, may have bad. We are a compilation of all the good, bad, and the neutral. We are neither goodly good, neither badly bad, or neutrally neutral, right? We are a mix of all three. So one is ignorance, right? Once we realize that we are worthy, we all have that Buddha nature to improve yourself, right? And we realize the worthiness of self, right? And then you don't have to pretend. You are comfortable in your own skin. If we put it in simple terms, right? We are comfortable in our own skin. You are worthy, right? Each of us are worthy in a way, right? If there was something that's not there, the whole engine wouldn't work. It's exactly like that. So one is that. One is, of course, already mentioned before. It's the attachment to external validation. It's attachment itself, right? Attachment to many different things. But one of the main cause is attachment to external validation, which is you seeking validation from other persons, right? Other persons thinking that you are a good practitioner, you are a compassionate practitioner, you are a kind-hearted practitioner. So pretense in a way grows, right? Grows where there's strong craving for respect. Now in the modern world, it's likes, likes, virality, right? Virality, followers, 1,000 followers, 2,000 followers, right? And approval from your peers. And of course, like, if I'm famous, I may get money, right? Attachment to money. Then the more you want it, the more you will pretend to be something that you are not, right? Act like, even though you don't have, you have to act. Otherwise, you will lose it, right? So here, the social media is a really good pretext for the bacteria to cultivate, bacteria of pretense to cultivate, right? So here what happens is, once you pretend in social media, you post a curated, even though you are not meditating, you may just act as meditating for a pose, right? You may pose for a meditation. Click the photo, post it in Instagram. Had a really good session. Session of meditation, right? You post it. But actually the pretense is acting out here, right? That is pretense. So here, what you are getting is, you are getting instant feedback. After you post, 5 seconds or 10 seconds later, there will be an Instagram notification or whatever social media that you are reading. Somebody commented on your post, somebody liked your post, right? There's that instant validation that's going on there. You get the instant feedback. And repeat, that happens again and again. So we are training the pretense to be stronger and stronger, right? So suppose you have an Instagram account full of quotes of all the Nalanda masters, right? Whatever we are showed here, you have full quotes of them, sharing them, right? Of His Holiness, the Nalanda masters, the great masters from different traditions, and you post some quote every day. This quote changed my mind, right? But you actually don't know whether it changed you or not. But in reality, you have not contemplated or understand that quote. That quote was the last time you really contemplated on that quote was like 3 months ago or more, never contemplated, right? And you post it and you say, this is a really good quote that changed my view on something, right? Especially now, since you can use AI, ChatGPT and everything to just put the code there and write a Instagram post for this quote, right? Then that will write it for you and you post it. But here what we are being is, online you are pretending that you are something that you are not. Offline, if you really meet, you may be a really angry person, right? Even though that quote was saying, knowing anger is the way to relieve yourself, right? A way to relieve. But offline, when you meet, then suddenly you are shocked to see that person. I thought that person was a really calm person. What happened here? Right? There is that mismatch. So pretense is, in a way, arising from all this attachment towards validation and everything. So we are training it in the sense. So this happens a lot in spiritual way also, right? And spiritually we act as if we are doing something that's not really spiritual. Not, I wouldn't say spiritual, religiously, right? That's not really the dharma, right? Pretending. Once you start pretending, then it's just a show, in a way, right? It's a show. So let's give a simple example, right? That's in the spiritual context. So if suppose in your work, your work suddenly has some new apps that you need to use, right? Then your boss asks, you know how to use this software, right? Right? Software or app or whichever process that's there. In your mind, you are thinking, you are I've never seen this icon in my life. I've never seen this software or this, what do you call, UI? Is it called user interface? User interface, UI, right? UI in this my life. But if I say no, will I get fired? There's that attachment to the job that you will get fired, right? Then, without thinking, without even a small gap, your mouth has already said, of course I know it. I did this 1 month ago, something, right? So then, okay, then you handle it. Your boss may say, you handle it. Then handle it. And then in your mind, you are like, how do I use this? You are spending nights trying to learn how to use that subject, Googling, and in a way, hoping that this wrong click may not delete all the data that's there, right? That may happen, right? So that's a pretense, claiming a skill that you don't have. So the causes here are easy, right? Attachment to something and fear. Of course, there is the fear of looking stupid. Then also pride also plays a little bit of part. I should know this, right? I should know this. Then if I don't act right now, they may think I'm less worthy, right? And we have built, in a way, a type of a culture or society where not knowing is punishing, right? You are punished for not knowing. You are not awarded for not knowing. Of course, you don't know, that's okay, but you can always learn it, right? We don't award for that. We award for knowing everything, right? Basically, you have to become the Buddha in the sense. So, in a way, this pretense, what does it create? It creates problems for yourself. You are spending the night trying to Google, not to delete the data, not to, it fools yourself, right? It fools yourself into doing something that you have not done. Whether it was honest, but let's talk about this in the discussion later on, right? If you all get fired, is that correct, Over? Okay, just keep that in mind. So the thing about here is we have created the culture. We live in a culture that celebrates, right? In a way, all this social media things and everything has created, in a way, unintentionally or intentionally, have created a culture that celebrates pretense, right? In a way, we call it what? Personal branding. You need a personal branding, right? Personal branding, or we call it marketing yourself. You should market yourself, right? And so that's what's creating this pretense. But it's, in a way, it's the same old afflictions that's there. Even when Instagram was not there, pretense is always there from the beginning of time, right? It's just wearing new clothes where it became more easy to pretend, right? More pretend. And you get more instant feedback about it. So the deepest cause here is we are constantly trying to be someone other than who you are, right? We are always, when you have to pretend, you are trying to be someone that you are not. You can upgrade to that person, but right now you are not that person, right? You are not the guy that knows the software, that knows that software. Of course, you can become that. So, in a way, pretense causes you to lie also, right? So that's the thing. So, maybe, can this be called pretense? I just give you a scenario, okay? I just give you a scenario, but then you think whether this is pretense or not. So, in friendship, of course, right? In friendship, of course, your friend asks, "Are you okay?" Right? "Are you okay? You seem a bit off today," right? If your friends ask like that, then you reply, "I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm best in the world. I'm energetic," right? You fake the smile. You fake the smile, basically. But deep inside, you are like depressed, you are in anxiety, or you also want that person to magically understand whatever it is without them understanding it, without you mouthing it, right? Without you saying what you are feeling, you want them to understand, right? Is this pretense? Because you are pretending to be fine, even though you are not, right? If you are vocal about it, if you said, "This is the problem I'm facing," right? Maybe you are attached to that person seeing you as a strong person. That's why you are not saying that. There may be different reasons to why you are not saying that, right? Whether you are depressed. So understand whether this is, let's think about it, whether this is pretense or not, right? So I just give you this question and we'll talk about it later in the discussion and everything. This, I feel, is subtle pretense, right? You are pretending that your emotional independence, pretending there is no need for your support, for others' support, where there is actually a need for the other's support, right? So that's the thing. We also believe that if I need that support from that person, I may feel weak. There are a lot of complications. There may be a lot of complications here also, but is that pretense? Let's think about it in a later sense, right? So just also ask this question to yourself. Any of you have said something online or in person that wasn't the truth, right? That wasn't what you are doing, you are thinking, because you wanted the other people to think better of you, right? Have you ever done anything like that in your lifetime? Maybe today, maybe yesterday,
Job interview.
Job interview? Okay, that's a good one.
Everything can.
Okay, job interview. Have you ever said something in the job interview that you cannot do? Okay, a lot of heads nodding, right? So that's good. Of course, now you know what pretense is, right? It basically causes us to lie. The effect is lying. So that pretense, of course, did it make you feel more confident, or did it make you feel less confident, less connected, or in the sense, right? I feel maybe less every time. You feel less confident. You feel the need to lie again and again, right? Also, how many of you have laughed at a joke that isn't even funny? Because everybody else is laughing, you need to laugh. Otherwise, I'll be the see? Otherwise, I'll be the one that's in Tibetan we call it white crow, right? So just to fit in, right? Basically just to fit in. So that's a tiny bit of pretense. We do it thousands of times, right? We do it every time that we actually forget that, why am I performing? Actually, you are performing, right? In a way, then we forgot that we are performing. That's when we start to feel like an NPC. That's when we may start to feel like we are a non-playable character, right? So we may be acting for the sake of others, right? Sake of others instead of yourself. You start to pretend like something you are not. That's what. So that's the thing. Okay. So here what we want to look good more than we want to be real, right? We want to deeper into the causes. Of course, the causes are the same, but if you go a little bit deeper, the deep cause here is we want to look good more than we want to be real, right? And we treat our identity like a brand, right? Brand to be promoted, to sell yourself, right? So instead of thinking yourself as a living process, living by moment to moment, we think of ourselves as a brand. If I don't sell myself, I'm done, right? There is a little bit of truth to that, but it's not the entire truth, right? So when we feel that, can low self-esteem and pride come together? Actually, they are roommates. So when I feel, right, there's that pride of I feeling that I'm not enough, then I create a more fake version of myself that is really good, right? So here what we are doing is we are creating a self-persona. We are creating a mask, right? Mask that is not there actually. It's a fake version of yourself. It's the really good fake version of yourself. So then you also think that if you fake it, then you will be worthy, that people will think you are worthy, right? But inside you know that it's a fake, it's a mask that you are wearing. So here it creates loneliness also, right? Since you are wearing a mask, the other person doesn't know what's going inside you. The other person doesn't know you inside out, right? It's not that as if we are a blank paper book that can be read, right? The other person doesn't know, and you are showing a different face of yourself. Then you start to feel lonely. You start to feel they don't like me. They just like the mask that I'm wearing. Insidely, we are feeling that, right? So that's one of the reasons of being lonely, right? We are not being vulnerable to the others. And in a way, it's a fault of the other also, that they do not respond kindly, or it's hard to deal with, it's hard to have human interactions, right? We don't want that, we always want that comfortable. We need to get out of that comfort to deal with a bigger problem, right? And we feel insidely that they don't like me, they like the fake me, they like my mask, right? So before we move on, this creates an impact of having the thought process of all the human beings being audience, right? Audience for you, right? They are audience for you. You are just performing and they are the audience looking at you, right? Whether they see your performance is good or not, then this type of slight mindset will be there, right? Even though you don't name it, because you are not naming it to tame it. If you are able to name, then we are constantly creating that, your personal brand, how you look in front of people, right? Then everyone else becomes the audience. You don't treat them as a fellow human being. You're treating them as somebody that needs to look at me like good or bad, right? Somebody that has an opinion about you. So that creates the self-individualistic, you are the center of the world type of mentality that's also there. Like, if I, right? Then loneliness, of course, we have talked about it, right? What it creates, loneliness when the people like our mask that we are constantly performing towards them, and we feel unseen, right? We feel as if the other person doesn't know us inwardly, right? Inwardly or truly, and we are not voicing it. So we feel like as if the life is scripted, right? We are acting based on others' perception of ourselves. Then NPC, of course, there should be a slight of that, but not the extreme version, right? We are already on the extreme. So when it becomes too extreme, then it becomes like your life is scripted by others. You have no control over it. Then you become an NPC, you start to feel lonely, right? So pretense here is not just a small lie, right? It's not just a small lie problem. It creates a disconnection with others, right? Not connection with others. So it creates a disconnection between ourselves and reality itself. So that's the thing. This is why I wanted to talk about pretense, right? Because there was a question in one of the sessions, last session, how can we make others not understand the self-curated self, right? Self-curated, like how to help others get rid of this. This is to pretend less, voice out your action, voice out your feelings, right, to others. And the others, if somebody else is voicing out to you, you be kind and respond to them in a kindly manner, right? So we create a society or a community like that. Even if others are not doing that, you do it, right? So that helps. So that's the thing. Now we come to a part where how do we reduce pretense, right? What actually works? So one antidote, of course, is meditation on impermanence, right? Whatever meditation on impermanence and imperfections, right? Imperfections. So there is a part that we meditate sometimes that everybody will eventually die, right? Eventually die, eventually grow old, right? The impermanence part. When we are meditating on impermanence, it's not just the impermanence of things. The main part of meditating on impermanence or meditating on your own self, right? Your own self always changing. Right now you may be a student, next time you may be a worker, employee, next time you may be a mother or yourself is always changing, right? In that sense. So, and you will eventually die of, right? I'm painting a really dim picture. You will eventually die. But it's not morbid, right? It's in a way liberating, knowing that whatever you are curating, trying to make a fake persona, right, eventually ends. Then when you really sit with that fact that everybody is temporary, you yourself are temporary, fragile, and flawed, right? We are flawed. We are, as a human being, flawed. Then you wanting to maintain that false image, right? Suppose you, let's say, for the sake of what do we call tender? What do you call tender? Symbolization. Yeah. Let's say we all live till 113 years, right? We all live for 113 years. Then the urgency of maintaining, we know that time limit, there's a time limit for how much we live. Then the maintaining of the false image starts to fade, right? We start to be more real, right? So why? Because if we are all going to, in a way, expire, right? Then what's the use of there to be pretending during the short time that we have? We be truthful, we be kind to others, right? Of course, I say don't pretend doesn't mean that you are always angry towards others, right? There is that another layer to it. But why pretend when we are all in the same boat, right? So, of course, there's that. The first one is meditating on impermanence and shared imperfection of all the human life, right? And of course, meditating on the precious human life also will help, right? The human life is really precious, and really each and every individual has their own potential, own qualities that suppose some of you may know complex science theories, right? Complex science theories and everything. Some of you may be really good at financing, right? Some of you may be really good at something else. It's a community of interdependence. Then you meditating on that, right? Thinking about the interdependence. Then for society work, if all were financiers, then we would all be bankrupt. If all were financiers, there were no farmers, we wouldn't get food, right? So all of this, we need a combination of everything. Everybody is worthy in their own way, right? So previously we quoted Indian masters. Now I want to quote a scientist. I think Einstein, right? Einstein. If you measure how clever the fish is, by its ability to climb the tree, right? Then the fish will always believe that it's a fool forever, right? Because fish cannot climb the tree. There's no ability there, right? If you think that you are inferior to others because you don't know some complex technical terms or whatever, right? Then you are measuring your own ability based on others, right? But it's a dependent thing. So fish, whereas if you do the opposite also, it's the same. Whereas if you think the monkey, you measure the monkey's cleverness by it being to live underwater, then it's a complex thing also, right? The monkey will always be foolish. But if you look at them individually and their own characteristics and or abilities, the fish can breathe underwater, live underwater, swim like tirelessly like fish. And monkey has their own ability to climb the tree, right? So they are worthy in their own way. Similarly for us, it's like that. So, of course, the name it to tame it is there. The second practice is name it to tame it. Second or third. Okay. So, then that's the thing, right? So, the one thing that's practical is maybe you have a friend or a relative that you can really confide on, right? The practical practice, right? So practicing vulnerability, vulnerability, right? Not being the perfect self always. Sharing with somebody that what you are feeling vulnerable about, right? And that person also needs to have certain characteristics for you to say that, right? That's the thing. And being truthful, right? Being truthful. So there is that thing about don't lie, right? Don't lie in Tibetan. Being truthful, just don't lie, basically. So correct, we call it correct speech, is it right? Correct speech. What's the name called? The eight noble paths. Eight noble paths, yes. Eight noble path. So in eight noble path, there's that correct speech, right? The correct speech means aligning our speech with reality, right? So this type of, sometimes, okay, this is a little bit complicated, but let's do it in the discussion stage, right? So that's the thing. Name it to tame it. Okay, that's my tagline. I'm going to post an Instagram post with this. Maybe it will go viral. So that's the thing. So we have all these antidotes, we have all these causes, right? So you apply this in your own life. Try to see which one suits best for you, right? Because there's no one shoe that fits everybody. Everyone has a different shoe, right? Shoe size. Otherwise, now we go back to the first session where Shantideva told us about wearing the shoe, right? Wear the shoe. The shoe size is different for everybody. So of these practices, whichever is more applicable or more beneficial to you, you do. There's no wrong practices in doing any of this, right? Suppose you may have more affinity towards name it to tame it, or you may have more affinity towards meditating on impermanence. So that's the thing. So now we go on to the second part, which is ignorance. So ignorance. It's a really hard, it's a really dense topic, right? We won't be able to actually finish it if we want to. But ignorance, let's go through the technical definitions and we'll go more into the practical, right? It's a mental factor that engages on its object in a confused manner, right? The function of ignorance is, because of this ignorance, other mental afflictions arise, right? And the karma that you do arise, whether it's good karma or bad karma, and suffering arise. So it's the root. So ignorance functions as a basis for arising of all mental mixtions. Actually, it's not mixtions, afflictions and faults, right? So that's the thing. That's ignorance. Yes. So next slide. Yes. So ignorance can be understood in two ways, right? So actually in Buddhist school, there are two ways that they define ignorance. So one, it is a mental faction, that is the confusion and consisting in the absence of knowing, right? Is the absence of knowing. It's non-cognition. It doesn't know anything. Suppose I ask you a topic, right? I ask you a complex topic. You being blank, that itself is ignorance. So this is said by Asanga and Vasubandhu, right? Teacher Asanga and Vasubandhu. So it's a mental factor that's basically not knowing, right? Suppose if I start talking suddenly right now in Tibetan, you all will be blank, right? So that is exactly what Asanga and Vasubandhu is saying. It's not knowing. Whenever that type of thinking arises, is not knowing itself. Whereas Dharmakirti and others, they define it as a cognition that apprehends in a distorted manner, right? This is the more accepted one, right? Right now, of course, they both have their own reasons and backgrounds and how they came to there. So consider ignorance to be a mental factor that is primarily the absence of knowing, right? Is miscognition, basically. Miscognition meaning, suppose it's impermanent, but you cognate it as a permanent thing. So there's a difference between how Dhammakriti accepts and how Asanga and Vasu, the two basically masters, accept ignorance, right? But the core fact here is both of them accept ignorance as the root of all suffering, right? Because of not knowing, we create suffering for ourselves. Then knowing in a distorted manner also creates suffering for ourselves, because what we are understanding and the reality doesn't come to terms with, right? So both of them accept that. So we go back to the root. We go back to the quotes that we have already said, right? Aryadeva is basically saying delusion is like the nervous system of all your mental problems. It's like the main, if you are a tree, is all the roots that's there, right? You can cut the symptoms, right? You can cut the branches, but if you don't, the name it to tame it, the meditation on impermanence, right? All of these are like temporary, temporary reductions of the mental suffering, which will help you, right? It's not that it won't help you, it will help you. But since unless we don't get rid of our delusion or ignorance, again the branches will arise, right? If you are not diligent enough, it will arise. We may be able to weaken it until we are able to cut it from the root. We won't be able to destroy it. So they'll keep coming back to life. So that's what he's saying. Aryadeva, he's saying that though. So now Shantideva says, when we are ignorant, ignorance is there in our mind, whatever we do, it's always paralyzed, right? We get paralyzed by our emotions, because like if you accept rebirth, in this life you may be a little bit free, right? But next life we don't know where we are going to be born, right? Then again it cannot do its job of being the clear and aware, right? So Lama Tsongkhapa says another thing. All the suffering in this has one root cause, it's ignorance, right? The axe that cuts that tree, right, tree from the root, is understanding emptiness, right? Understanding dependent arising. So the way everything exists dependently, not independently, right? So that's the thing. So now we come to the most important part, the good news. This is the bad news that I have been telling you, all the bad news, right? You have all this bad news in you. Now the good news here. The good news is, if ignorance is the root, since all the masters are saying, and you check for yourself whether ignorance, simply put, if it's just not knowing, you not knowing how to deal with the situation creates the suffering, right? So that, if you think simply from this term, we can see ignorance is the root of cause, right? Not knowing itself, not knowing how to deal with situation, not knowing whether you dealing with the situation in this way will inflate it further or decrease it, right? Not knowing is in a way root of all suffering. If you simply look at that much, of course we can go much more deeper and see how ignorance causes like sufferings and all. But at the root we can see, simply put, that's a fact, right? Not knowing creates suffering. So the good news here is, if ignorance is the root, then destroying or cutting ignorance is all you need to do, right? We don't need to learn about 8,400 mental factors, right? 84,000, right? 84,000. Yeah, 8,400, sorry. 84,000 mental factors, right? 84,000 mental factors is like, even if you learn one mental factor per day, that's 84,000 days of your life, right? Here the benefit is destroying ignorance is the master key for all doors, right? Right? All doors. It's not that you have to fix every 84,000 problems one by one. That will take a lot, right? You pull the tree from its roots, then the whole garden of your mind starts to heal. So, ignorance, now if we go into the second sense of what the other master has said, is miscognition, misknowing, knowing wrongly, right? So, then if we know wrongly, then suppose there is a situation, your friend didn't mean it, but you interpreted it, whatever he had said or she had said, interpreted it in your own story terms, you distorted the reality, now you two are not friends, you two are enemies, right? So that also, ignorance plays a part here, right? So, but we don't actually wake up thinking that, today my main issue is fundamental ignorance, the nature of reality. Imagine if this was the case, we all would be like so kind persons, right? We all would be the really good persons that we are. Actually, we actually are good persons, but we don't wake up, we have been polluted by all these different afflictions that we have talked about. When we wake up, we don't think the mismatch between the fundamental reality and my perception of it. We think more like, oh, my main issue today is how do I deal with my boss? My main issue is oh, I forgot to charge my battery last night. Today morning it's only what's considered a dangerous 10%, okay? Yeah, 20%. It's red, right? And oh, now today they are going to, when we wake up, we usually think, today they are going to go out. Oh, they didn't invite me, I'm missing out, right? All of this are when we wake up, we usually think like that, but we don't usually think of really improving ourselves. When we wake up, we don't connect with our body, right? Connect with our own emotions. Then there's that mismatch that's already happening from the beginning, right? So, we call it, in Tibetan, it's really, the name is really, it's the verse that Rinpoche had said, it's itself really, like in Tibetan, it hits your heart, right? The root is, we call it marikpa. Ma is the, what we call, negative negation, yeah? Marikpa means you not knowing. The wording is really sharp in Tibetan translation, but since translating, it loses its power, right? It loses the context. The root of our ignorance is you not knowing. So when you say like that, it in a way like hits you, right? So it's knowing wrongly. So what is this ignorance that we are talking about, right? So pretense, we told that it's like a mask. It's like a mask that we are wearing. Ignorance is the wrong script that has been given to you, right? You are acting because ignorance is saying you to act like that, right? Ignorance is the wrong script. So basically, even if you don't take away so much that whatever I have talked, since I have talked a lot, I want you to take away two things. Pretense is the mask, ignorance is the script that is asking you to act like that, right? So here, how the different schools of Buddhism define ignorance is different. how they point at ignorance is also different, right? So suppose the Sautantrika, Chitamata, all of them point to ignorance as being your self-sufficient, substantially existence, self-identity. Okay, technical terms again. Okay, let's not go much more deep into that. I'll just give you I'll just throw it down, and later on you catch it, right? Hope you catch it. So all three of these schools accept the ignorance as being self-sufficient, substantially existent self, right? This is like one of the hardest topic of Buddhist philosophy, right? Then the Prasangika and Prasangika accepts the ignorance as thinking of inherently existence, right? Thinking of phenomena or the person self as being inherently existence, intrinsic existence, not relying on anything, right? So this is much more deeper, right? When we know that we rely on, dependent on anything, the ignorance loses its power, right? So, I think your typing speed is good. So that's the thing.
I'm pretending.
So now what we need to focus here, I'll go a little bit like technical, right? A little bit technical just for 1-2 minutes. Since going technical, I don't feel it's really necessary, but for those who want to go technical, I'll just throw some words around that, hope that you catch it, right? So basically all of this, right? But in the, what do we call, Vaibhasika, the Vaibhasika school, basically there are 4 schools in Buddhist tenet. The Vaibhasika school, they accept the ignorance to be different from the afflictive view, which we have already talked, right? Afflictive view, we talked that there was 5 afflictive views. Then one of the 5 afflictive views was afflicted view of perishable collections or transitory collections, right? They accept that this mental factor and ignorance are different, right? Because they work differently. The afflictive view is like a corrupted intelligence that's there, and the ignorance is just simply not knowing. So Vaibhasika accepts it like that, whereas others, the afflictive view of transitory collections or perishable collections is ignorance, right? Is ignorance. It's the same thing, right? It's just that you name it differently, but it's the same thing. So here, when we are talking about Sautantrika and Chittamatra, all of them accept that the root of samsaric cyclic existence is because of you thinking the self-sufficient, substantially existent person or to be true, right? Because of that, you are getting the cyclic existence. So, whereas in Prasangika school, this is much more deeper, right? You thinking of all phenomena and all persons being existence only because of their intrinsic existence or absolute existence or ultimate existence, then the cause of all the afflictions arising is this, according to Prasangika school. So now I feel as if I'm teaching in a monastery school teaching, right? The technical terms and everything. So let's go simplified, right? Let's go a little bit simplified. This is all the technical jargon that I've already thrown out, right? Hope that, but sometimes it's important to know the technical jargons, right? Later on, okay, if that guy talked about something technical jargon like this, you may go to the book and read and it will help you, right? So, but let's go a little bit simplified. We'll mostly focus on the Prasangika school's view, but because that's the ultimate view, right? Ultimate in the sense that it's the reality, right? Is the reality, more focused on reality. So right now, you all, of course, you all believe that you are you, right? Do you believe that you are you? Of course we believe, right? You believe that you are you. You believe you are a solid, independent, continuous self, right? You have been the same you for, let's say, 25, 45, 65, right? Years. So, but we also forget the fact that we are always changing, right? What neuroscience and practice also shows us that we are just a process, right? We are a continuous process of changing, right? If scientifically speaking, the cells in our body are dying every time, right? Being reborn, not being reborn, being like, what do you call it, replaced every time. Then our thoughts are also arising from moment to moment, right? 1 minute you may be thinking, I should be doing this, then I should not be doing this, right? But second moment you are thinking of another. So your sense of actually what's the reality here is the sense of yourself is being recreated every time, right? Every moment. But we don't experience it that way, right? We experience it ourselves as being independent. I don't need this. When we look at the I, the reality of that we are always changing and we are dependent on others, but we experiencing it differently, the mismatch here, right? The mismatch here is what causes the suffering. The mismatch is ignorance, right? So from this fundamental ignorance of yourself, a whole, what do you call, dance of suffering follows you, right? So, of course, ignorance, there are two types of ignorance also. This is easy to understand, right? Innate ignorance, where you don't know that you are being ignorant, but you are still ignorant. And there's that acquired ignorance, right? Acquired ignorance. This acquired ignorance or intellectual ignorance. You can be an intellectual, but you can still be ignorant, right? So that's ignorance. The first one is like you just don't know that it's there. You need to practice a lot to recognize that it's there. You need to meditate on that, right? But acquired ignorance is actually based on wrong philosophical views, wrong views that you have created over time, right? Over time, or from false ideas, right? So that's the thing. But how can we? Let's just try it for 1 minute, right? 1 or 2 minutes. Let's just try a short meditation to see if you can point the eye, right? You can point thinking whatever your name is, right? Your name may be Tenzin, or your name may be Lobsang or Changchu, or right? Then you point to that person. Okay, think of it, right? So let's just do it. First, to realize ignorance, we need analytical meditation, right? This doesn't work with single-pointed meditation. We need analytical meditation. We need analysis of self, right? So we'll do it today, right? You ask yourself, we are not doing it right now, we'll do it after a certain point, right? We ask yourself, what is I? What am I? Where is this me? We ask these 3 questions. What is I? What am I? And where is this me? Right? We ask these 3 questions. Just meditate on these 3 questions. Right? Try to find the answer for each and everything. Right? So, and this is not that you just come with an academical answer just to gain points, right? You answer from your own experience, right? What you feel is the I, right? So when you do this, you will notice that that I is really hard to pinpoint of, right? But there is still this sense of I that you are looking up for in the horizon. You don't quite touch it, but it seems that it's there, right? But you can say, I can touch myself, right? I can touch myself, I can feel myself. But we notice the feeling, right? I'm here, I'm still. It feels inner, right? I feels like as if it's inner our body, in our body. Then the world is out there, fixed, right? So we must notice that. We must notice whenever I think of I, it feels inward our body, right? Whereas when we think of the world, it feels where? Outward, right? Outward our body. So, and we must also notice here that when we think of something is bad, this is absolutely bad. This is absolutely good, right? We have that inflation of things that happening. So we check ourselves, where is that me, right? Then we try to find that me. If you can find it, then good luck to you, right? If you find it, then you have found something that we should look for. But if you don't find it, then there is no solid me, right? There's not that solid me. So ignorance is so fundamental ingrained in ourselves that if you don't practice meditation, right, that we will never see it clearly. It will just be the things that are there, right? So we will do that meditation as short after, right? First, we will recognize the cause, right? The structure, right? We have, in a way, slightly identified I. This identifying ignorance is not easy, right? We can define it into word terms, but identifying it really is not easy, right? A lot of Buddhist masters spent years of their time trying to identify this, right? So it's not one thing that we can just say and identify, but we can have a gist, or we can have a taste, slight taste, or smell. Taste is too near. We can have the smell of it, right? Smell the ignorance. So let's see the structure, right? One of the causes of this basically is like, if we talk about in Tibetan Buddhist terms, it's like a long, continuous process that you have been so stuck with that it comes innately, right? So one cause is the structure of perception, right? Like whenever we perceive something, a person, an object, or feeling, so we solidify it, right? We make it something like as if it's so real, so inherent, right? It makes us think like this is something solid, right? Suppose you see a chair, your mind inherently label it as chair. Of course, we label it chair, right? Suppose instead of chair, let's say iPhone. you label it iPhone, then you treat it as if it's inherent, independent, existing in its own side, right? iPhone, right? Then, but the reality here is the iPhone-ness of the iPhone, right? You see it as a solid thing. The iPhone-ness is mostly imposed by your own mind. It's not actually a solid thing that's there. So without your mind to designate or label it as iPhone, right? Without your mind or the collective minds that are there to label it as iPhone, it's just some chips, some materials that are put together, right? That are put together to do a function, right? That are put together. If you separate each and every, if you dissect each and every part, it will come out, what do you call? It will come out to be non-existence. It's totally dependent on all of the collections of the parts, the processors, the cooling, all these things together, software and everything together. Then it becomes and iPhone, right? So what we found here, the labelness of the iPhone, the solidness of the iPhone is made out of our mind, right? Our mind. But it feels that it's solid, right? So, of course, like there's the habitual cycle that's continuous, right? Continuous over the lifetimes that we have been reborn in. Suppose, let's say, you do bicep curls for 1 billion of times. What will happen? You get big muscles like Arnold, right? Basically, ignorance is something that we have been doing for the 1 billion of times, right? Ignorance is something that during the courses of rebirths and lifetimes, we have been reinforcing this thought, strengthening this thought. So it's become so natural that we don't even notice it, right? So that's the thing. Okay, so let's just do a slight 5-minute, not even 5 minutes, like 2-3 minutes analytical meditation to how to identify, right? We recognize the causes, we know what it is like to have an identify, right? I hope we know, right? But let's try to identify it more, right? Identify it more, because this is important if you want to practice emptiness. So, okay, so let's just settle the mind first. The settling the mind is just you noticing, all of you, please close your eyes. Let's not pretend that we are closing your eyes, right? Let's not do the pretense, but we just close our eyes, focus on the breath, right? Breath. Focus it coming inside, you are inhaling it, and now you are exhaling it. So again, same thing, inhale, exhale. Do not force it, just do it naturally. In and out, and again in and out. So now, what I want to do is, you bring your mind to a moment when you strongly felt about this self, right? This timing could be a time that you felt insulted. It can be a time that you felt proud. It can be a time that you felt lonely. It can be a time that you were threatened. It can be a time that you were angry. Right? At that point of time, when you felt insulted, proud, or lonely, notice at that point of time, you say, this person is insulting me, right? In that moment, there was a strong sense of I or me, right? Now we ask the question that we asked before. What is that I? Don't think of it philosophically. Just look at it directly from your experience. We ask the question again. What is that I? Is the I your body at the point of time? Because if it was your part of your body, then if you had to lose that part of the body, would you lose a part of your I? Or will that sense of I will still be there? It will still be there, right? So, then the next one. Since it's not a part of your body, the me is not your body. Is the I your thoughts? Thoughts that are happening, constantly changing? Then you would have different thoughts every second. Then ask the question, am I different every second? Right? Is the I that we have perceived, I am angry, that I different every second? Then if that's different every second, then how is there a solid I? Then is the I your feelings? If there is it is feelings, your emotion change, right? Rage, anger becomes sadness. Sadness sometimes can become joy or nostalgia. If I change with every emotion, you would be a different person every minute, right? Then where is that solid I that's there, right? Where do you feel attacked? Like whenever there is this I is insulted or attacked. Then we'll ask the fourth question. Okay, since it's not my body, since it's not my feelings, since it's not my mind, is there something else that's looking upon it? We feel there is a solid I that's not this, right? Try to locate it, pinpoint it. Right? Let's try to pinpoint it. But what do you find? There is this sense of I, but when you try to pin it down, it's slippery. You cannot pinpoint it, right? Whenever you think of it. It's almost like you are trying to see your own I. Right? So, that's the gap that we need to find. The gap, not finding the solid I, that's actually you finding the insight into the truth, right? Truth of emptiness. So when we don't find that solid I, we don't have to find something to replace it. Just rest in the experience of not being able to find it, right? Not being able to find yourself, find me or I. Let your mind just relax there. Let's not strain. So when we don't find that I, you are actually, in a way, slightly meditating on emptiness, right? This is actually the beginning of understanding emptiness. So when you are ready, you can open your eyes or return your attention to the room. Yes. Hope this was helpful, right? So how this meditation works is, in a way, it directly contradicts this ignorance, right? The ignorance that we are pointing here is the self-cherishing mind, right? Where whenever we get angry, whenever we get insulted or threatened, there is that feeling of the solid I being attacked. Then that causes attachment or anger, right? Anger or attachment. So whenever this solid me is attacked, when you don't find that solid me, right, you will lose the strength of the attachment and the angers will go away, right? So this is a short practice, right? Short practice, of course, there are more advanced practice, a short practice for how to tame the ignorance, right? This doesn't work like name it to tame it. This is a little bit more harder than name it to tame it, right? Of course, you should be able to name it to tame it, but naming it itself is really hard, right? So when they say, whenever the teachers say, when you practice emptiness, you always have to do an analytical, this question and answer session with yourself. Try to find that I, right? So when this meditation directly contradicts with ignorance, right? Ignorance says that there is a solid I somewhere inside, near your heart, near your body, somewhere, right? Somewhere. But when you meditate, when you look into it deepward, inward, right, you don't find it. You don't find that I, right? Then this both cannot be true. Which one is true? We have to decide one, right? One says that you cannot find the I. One says that there is the I, right? These both feelings of ourselves cannot be true in both sense. So which one makes more sense? You need to find that, right? Over time, this repeated investigation, right? Repeated analytical meditation will weaken the grip of ignorance, right? And you will be able to pinpoint, name it, right? Basically. Of course, the others are, you can understand what we call, okay. The others you can apply the depending arising, like all these meditations that we did before, right? Like depending arising, I am dependent on others. These are a little bit easier, but to actually find the solid I and not find it is really hard, right? The teachers, when they say whenever you do this meditation, you look from a third eye, right? Third eye meaning you don't have a third eye. Basically, you look from a third person perspective, right? Whenever you are generate the want to be in a generate the experience that you had when you were insulted or threatened, at a point of time you feel, I am angry, right? This person is attacking me, right? Attacking me. Then when we look at that me, there, for me, it felt as if there's something like a rock solid, like a round thing here, right? Somewhere here. Then when you see that whether that is you or not, that is not you, right? So when you pinpoint it, then slowly it will loosen its grip and you will be able to understand emptiness. But this takes a lot of time, right? So I think, yeah, we'll stop here. Meditation, of course, we have done this, right? We have done like how ignorance is what ignorance causes us problems and everything. Then now what we do is the takeaway, right? The takeaway, next session we'll talk about how ignorance causes us to the cyclic existence and everything, right? And we'll have a more question and answer session tomorrow, since the class has been pulled up, right? Pulled up. So the takeaway here for today's session is: pretense is the mask we wear to protect a fragile self-image. It promises connections but often delivers loneliness, right? So it's not the 11-level sale where you get what you are offered, right? Ignorance is not just that I don't know. It is a deep missing, taking the changing as permanent and interdependent as separate as ultimately solid, right? So the antidote for both of this is in a way facing the truth, right? Facing the reality. Understanding dependent arising and nature of emptiness, right? So meditating, I hope that that was a little bit beneficial, right? So we'll stop here and go to the discussion session after a short refreshments break. Okay, thank you.